building available to the community. And so we, at that time, we did have a resident choir, which was involved in music, but we wanted to go beyond that. In 2011, we actually hired an operations manager to, we thought, to run concerts and raise money to help us live into this stage of our life. But in 2013, we decided that even with the increase in activity, we're already a community hub of sorts, that we were not financially viable. And so we decided, a group of us with direction from the congregation, to figure out how to engage the community in supporting our building. In fact, we thought of the congregation and the building as two different things. The building is an asset and the congregation is a worshiping community. And although they share the same building and we call it church, we actually imagine those things differently. The idea of hatching, we hatched the idea of friends related to the building. And that group identified some needs if we were going to be a community hub, what we needed to do. And one was to improve accessibility. So it turns out that the addition put on in the 60s, a fair-sized addition actually, only has one floor, and the upstairs only has one floor. You can get right around to the balcony of the church through the upper addition. And so it made sense to put in an elevator that would actually go from our basement to the first and second floor. We needed to increase washrooms. We have a sanctuary that seats 850 people. So when a concert's there in full, 6 washrooms just didn't cut it. And we need a sidewalk entrance that's accessible for the building. And we also felt that we needed to have an endowment, which we wanted to establish at the community foundation level, the income from which would support capital projects, small capital projects in the range of $35,000 to $50,000 a year, which our building requires. So in 2015, we did a feasibility study with support from Bay of Quinte Conference. And we asked the question, can we raise over $1 million to bring this building up to standard such that it could function as a community hub? And the answer back on that was yes, if we did our homework. So we went away and did homework for over a year. And in 2016-17, in this time frame, I just wanted to tell you where we're at and what we've done. So we've actually incorporated Friends of the Spire as a not-for-profit charity organization in Ontario. Excuse me. And we've applied for Canada Revenue Agency approval. And that not-for-profits organization, its interest is in supporting the building and raising money for the building and assisting in management of the building. So we have actually identified the building as the Spire. That came out of the feasibility study. We said to people, including congregation and community people, if you wanted to identify this building and what happens in it, what would you call it? And so we have branded it as the Spire. And so we now have a sign out in front of our building that has a heritage sign that says the Spire and also has the church's name on it, the congregation's name. We've established an endowment at the Community Foundation in Kingston, the income from which will flow to the congregation for building support. We completed a halo effect study. This is a study supported by EDGE, and it measures the economic impact of what you do in your congregation and what you do in your building. And our halo effect study for 2016 indicated that we have a $1.7 million economic impact on the city. Apart from the social impact, there's an economic impact. That's helpful when we talk to businesses and councillors in the city to talk about how important these buildings are for the function of the city. So we also raised about $600,000 from the congregation, about $40,000 to date from community sources, and about $80,000 in grants. And we're just starting a community campaign to increase the community support. And with the money we already raised, we have completed washroom construction on washrooms and an elevator. And we had an official celebration of completing that on October 21st, thanks to the Rick Hansen Foundation, which was one of our funders. And we're currently raising additional funds for a sidewalk entrance. We also have a draft memorandum of understanding with the trustees at Sidney Street United Church. The aim, part of that, is to define the relationship between Friends of the Spire, Inc. and the congregation so we don't trip over each other. And in that memorandum of understanding, we've actually established a provision for a building management group that will actually manage the building on behalf of the congregation, and that's mostly is made up of 4 people from the congregation and 3 people from Friends of the Spire. So we figure if you're going to ask community to help you engage in supporting your building, you need to give them some role in it, and their role is going to be involved in that management group. We have over 20 groups using the space, ranging all the way from AA groups to child support groups to Overeaters Anonymous to choir practices. But I guess one of the things we've learned is that ongoing usage, like office users that pay you a monthly rental, is essential as an economic engine in this case. The episodic things like concerts and those kinds of things add gravy, but that's not what's actually driving what's going on. And so we have a mixed economy, I guess I would say, of social justice groups and people who can afford to pay some money and people who can afford to pay the top rates that we have. I guess in this process, we made many presentations to the congregation, and we've sought approval for all of our initiatives that are involved in this effort. So I've been talking mostly about how you imagine converting a space that has a congregation into a space that has a congregation and a bunch of other users, and how you work with them to make this all work. I indicated at this point in time that the 3 community people we have involved in the board are all people who have come from people who've used the building for a number of years. And
Great.
So that's our connection and our link. Am I about 5 minutes now?
You're about 7 minutes now.
Oh dear.
Yoo-hoo! That's great. Thank you, Bruce. You mentioned a number of pieces there, which would obviously be good to get into in more detail. But perhaps I'll invite. I know about the halo effect opportunity that's available for churches to figure out their kind of value to a city in terms of what they contribute. So maybe we might have time to come back to that conversation a bit more later, because it's a useful tool, I imagine. I'd like to move now to the other coast, and I would like to invite Janine and Bill, I think, if you would be so kind as to introduce the work that you're doing. Thank you.
Yes, so we'll be doing this in 2 pieces. I'm going to give some background on how we got here, and Janine's going to give some information about where we're at and what we're hoping to do. A few years back, well, to give you the context of where we're at, we're a historical church, but not historical in the terms of what it would be historical to be in Ontario or Nova Scotia. Yeah. So in the 40s, it was built here, and we're at the core of, or the very edge of the downtown core of Abbotsford, which has been doing a lot of revitalization in the last 10, 12 years. We also host the farmers market every Saturday. So a good portion of our building is already seen by the community as a community center. They're in all the time. In fact, at times when people ask me, when I'm trying to describe where our church is, I say, we're by the farmers market. And they say, oh, that church. So they know us by the market. But it opened up the opportunity to talk about the fact that this building is used so often. And then the other piece was thinking about those who are called the spiritual but not religious, and recognizing that we still have a call to reach out to them and nurture their spirituality. In fact, we started out in this process with a vision that might have been something along the line that a vision that everyone in all of Canada would have a means and a ways to understand their connection with the divine, a spiritual health and well-being, which of course we here in Abbotsford can't help everyone in Canada, but our mission then was to actually open the doors in some manner that people could come through the doors. People who are hesitant to get involved in organized religion. So we started out by saying to ourselves, a group of people, that we don't know what we don't know. Sort of admitted that this is a wide open door for us. if you come assuming you already know the answers, you're going to not reach the people who've already decided that you don't know the answers. We got a grant from our presbytery through the conference and hired a consultant who did focus groups on this concept and idea of a spiritual center, developed for us a business plan, had lots of meetings with us back and forth, and started first initially offering 3 different programs, and then what did we learn from that? And some of the things we did learn was around promotion, costs, what we should be paying facilitators. We learned the value of partnerships. We had a presentation from the university. A professor came and presented actually on Palestine, and how much that broadened who we got connected with. We started out by saying that we were going to make sure that this program was cost neutral. It wasn't going to cost the church to run it. So we're getting closer and closer to that. And that it's a parallel structure with the church. The intent was not to make it, I'm the minister of the church, the intent is not to make it so my time was completely consumed with trying to create a new organization. We recognized right away if that happened, one or the other would suffer. Yeah. So then finally I'd say before I turn it over to Janine is that the core group that started this and got very interested was a book study group that had been together for over 10 years. So when we invited people from the congregation to be involved in this, that group was the one that said, yeah, let's do something like that. And many of those are still on the team. I'll pass it on to you, and maybe we'll go back and forth if we got time.
Okay, my name's Janine Wright, and I'm the event coordinator for the Spiritual Path to Awakening. So my job is to find new programs and to coordinate between our presenters and our volunteers or our team, along with keeping our social media up to date and our website up to date. So our goal when we started out, when we sat down, was to have 2 single-day events per month and 1 weekly one that would run. And we've found that we've been able to achieve that goal. So some of our regular programs are a weekly yoga that we have on Saturday mornings. And then we found one of our yoga instructors knew how to teach meditation. So then we started a meditation program, and we broke it out to doing a weekly event for meditation, but we would put it in like a 6-week block, and we found our attendance increased when people felt like they knew this was 6 weeks commitment. So that's what we kind of did. And then we would just create another one after that 6 weeks was done. We do a paint night every other month with a local artist who comes in, and that's quite popular. And we've partnered with a leader in the Aboriginal community here locally to put on 4 events per year that kind of is almost Indigenous education. So she's done drumming circles for us, medicine wheel teachings, so just kind of talking about spirituality in that sense. Our growth, Bill kind of touched upon learning about how to promote ourselves. So when we started out, we were paying for newspaper ads, and our attendance was quite low. So we stepped away from that, and we really started utilizing free advertisements. So Craigslist or the newspaper we found online, you could submit an event for free for their online newspaper, and then a heavy social media presence. So we're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and we kind of keep that up to date. We did find that promoting our events through Facebook paid advertisement has been very effective, and our attendance has gone up for our events through that outlet. So for our identity, as Bill kind of mentioned, we wanted to create a safe, neutral environment for those who are uncomfortable with the idea of organized religion, where they can come and they can try to break down that wall and open themselves up to spirituality or any sense. And I think we're kind of achieving that goal. So that's pretty much everything on my end. Yeah.
The only thing I'd add is that we very intentionally, as part of the identity, is we created a logo. Hope you can see that. Spiritual Pathway to Awakening, and then we've made these poster boards for most of the ongoing events, like this is the meditation one. And of course, if you want to check out more, go to our our website, abbyspa.com.
Great. Well, thank you very much. That was lots of learnings in that about how to both start something new and get the word out about it. So at this point, I'd like to invite Russell Day, if you'd be willing to step into the space and share what you're discovering at your site.
Sure. Hi there, I'm Russ. I work at St. Andrew's United Church in Halifax. Jeff, do we need to send somebody around to break down a door or something so you can escape from the basement there? It looks like an interesting office you're building down there.
Where's Jeff gone? Hi, Jeff.
Yeah, I am in the world headquarters of Bang Bang Consulting. This is about as good as it gets.
Okay. I'm going to tell you about St. Andrew's United Church in Halifax, which has had a long history of functioning in a way that's akin to a hub. We've had partner organizations working in the building for at least 30 years. An organization called ARC that has worked with us to provide a free supper to homeless folks and poor folks every Sunday night. Upwards of 250 people come to that event every time. You're hearing my text go ding, ding, ding. If that's the noise you're picking up, don't worry about it. I haven't figured out how to turn that off on a Mac yet. Over that time, we've evolved more and more towards we call it a crossroads. We're located on one of the main crossroads in the city of Halifax, and it's become a place of multiple intersections. So we've evolved from those beginnings to a point at which now we have the Sunday suppers for those 250 people. We have a free walk-in medical clinic run with about 4 or 5 faculties and schools from Dalhousie University at the same time on Sunday nights. 2 nights a week we have street kids and youth at risk in participating in a choir program. We have a couple of GLTBQ friendly organizations that run choirs in our building. We have all kinds of anonymous organizations, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. What we've also been through multiple adaptive conversations with the congregation about how to move forward with our identity and our mission and our understanding of who we are. We had a big one that lasted a full year in the year 2006. It was called a Jubilee Year, and the congregation agreed to stop doing normal business for a whole year and to just do 3 things. We worshiped and we did pastoral care, but we had parties. We had engaged in multiple kinds of adaptive conversation within the congregation, appreciative inquiry, special workshops, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then for the last third of the year, we talked to every organization in the city that would talk to us. Muslim organizations, Buddhists, Jewish, street kids organizations, United Way, et cetera, et cetera. And we went through a process of coming up with a model of who we were. And we identified ourselves as a church of service and renaissance. A few years later, we went through a recovenanting process where we honed down on what it meant to be a church of service and renaissance, and engaged more fully some of our partnerships. Recently, we went through another remissioning process about 5 or 6 years after the last one. We had an interruption of a $400,000 fraud and an $800,000 fire in 2014. our church secretary had been stealing money over 4 years, and it added up to $420,000. And mysteriously, as we were closing in, the rooms with all our financial records went up in flames, and we had an $800,000 fire. That wasn't all bad in terms of the life of the congregation and energizing for renewal, because going through that, what we called it an unwanted journey, a kind of exodus, really strengthened the community and pushed us into a place where we figured if we had survived that, we could survive a little bit of experimentation, you know? In the remissioning process more recently, we've identified 4 core values and 4 mission foci. And the mission foci are spiritual poverty, engaging communities and leaders across the many social boundaries that are embedded in Halifax. So sort of developing social capital across boundaries. Responding to justice issues and actual poverty. And I'm forgetting the 4th one. I should have had it in front of me. What we decided to do this round was to conflate the mission conversation with the sustainability conversation, because it sure is expensive to have that many partners in the building doing that many programs, some of them with us, some of them on their own, and all of it being paid for by us. So we've been paying all the heat, all the maintenance, all the cleaning, all of the administrative staffing of the space. So we need that equation to change. So we engaged a social enterprise called Common Good Solutions to do some research for us on organizations with similar challenges and missions, to develop 3 or 4 possible models of moving forward, and then to organize for us a number of community engagement sessions. And in September, October, we invited about 40 community groups, some of them already partners, some of them other faith communities, universities, social enterprises, to come and spend an evening with us talking about the possibilities moving forward. One of the things I should have said is that we have...
So Russ, you've got like 20 seconds.
Okay. We've got multiple interfaith partnerships. So now what we're doing is we're testing the model that's boiled down out of that. And the model is something akin to a hub or a center for social innovation, but we're testing to see if it could be more of a center for spiritual innovation, sort of moving in the direction of your center in Abbotsford there. So that's where we're at.
All right. Well, you left lots of teasers there for more conversation. I'm intrigued by your use of the word spiritual poverty as part of your foci. That's that sounds like a very interesting space to explore. And I'm also curious about your journey in framing the fraud and the fire as an Exodus experience, and the role that played in the evolution of your community and your story together. Sounds very rich. So that was a new piece I hadn't heard before, so thanks, Russ. All right, I'd like to move to Gloria. So Gloria, thank you for joining us today and to share the story of your church and its journey around becoming a community hub, or your interest in that. And as you've seen with the previous topic guides, we've been allocating about 7 minutes. So we'll give that to you and invite you to share about what you've done and what you're on the cusp of, what your church has done and what it is on the cusp of. So you can unmute yourself there, and we look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be able to be here today. And I am a lay person at St. James United Church in Parry Sound. And I'm the team lead on something that we're calling the Implementation and Transition Team, which is the the small group of people that is working along to push forward on the mission that we have developed, or mission or vision. About 4 years ago, we really recognized that our income was going down, and if we were going to stay viable, we needed to do something different. We also realized that, what that was a reflection of was that maybe the church as we were currently being as church wasn't really responding to what the community was needing. And really, you look around and you hear so much about loneliness, people feeling disconnected, all those kinds of really spiritual gaps in the community. How could we address those things? How could we involve people? So we started out doing a lot of consultation. We did receive financial support from our presbytery and brought in a consultant. We did several listening circles within the congregation. And then we went out into the broader community and held consultations with people, and we kind of did it into sort of like interest areas. So we brought in the small business community and asked them what did they see as needs in the community, and where did they see St. James perhaps fitting into those needs? What could we do to assist? We brought in the social services folks, who of course we were already familiar with, the arts and culture and so on. And out of all of that work, which I think took close to 2 years, we came out with this very broad statement that was incorporating kind of everything that would say that we would support creativity, culture, spirituality, and that we would promote healthy relationships with each other, ourselves, and the land. And through all that, then we've talked about becoming a center for the community. We really haven't used the term community hub, although it's something that I'm familiar with. And it's interesting, I'll just digress for a second. It's interesting that in Ontario, the government of Ontario is doing a whole study around community hubs. And they're very interested in the idea of connections and loneliness and on the impact on people's health. So I think that's interesting that that's happening out kind of in the broader community. So we really thought that we need to be doing things that would give lots of opportunities for people to connect with each other and to build relationship. And I think my understanding is that that is actually the spiritual connection. And we recognized that we needed to do that in a social enterprise model, that there needs to be a way of generating income if we are going to be able to still be here in the future. And so there are 4 streams that came out of that work. This is directly from the consultation process, and that was that we would focus on food and food-related issues, access to healthy food, and then arts and culture, which has translated into being largely music in our situation here, although we're looking at ways of perhaps expanding that. Community resilience, and then the affordable space rental. And that's where we are looking at finding the income piece to help support everything else. So we have loads of things happening in the building. We were already doing some of the things that lots of churches do, working with the local food bank, and they do a couple of meals a week. We offer hospitality luncheon, which is something that we do ourselves, which is again food on Thursdays. But we've also partnered up with, for example, the Georgian Bay Biosphere Reserve, and with them we're offering community kitchens. We have a community kitchen for seniors twice a month, and elders. The elders from the Friendship Center have joined us in that. And then every week we have a community kitchen for a lot of people who have really varied backgrounds, various types of disabilities or barriers to the economy. And so they're participating that way. We have a partnership with the Whispering River Orchestra. They're doing various programs, music programs for children and seniors. And that's a kind of a neat thing that they're doing, where they're working with children and seniors together, and they kind of support each other. We have the Baha'i in the building. We have the Choral Collective, another music group. And we've been developing relationships with the Downtown Management Board and the Chamber of Commerce. So, and what you asked me about what are we on the cusp of, or where we're at. So right now, one of the most exciting things that's just happened is that we recognized a while ago that us volunteers could only do so much. And so we did manage to get funding through the Ontario Trillium Foundation to hire a program director. And so she just started in October. And so she's helping us to kind of get this a little bit more organized, get some consistent procedures in place and policies in place, so that we're treating everybody in a consistent way, not necessarily the same way, excuse me, but also taking a look at the financial aspect of it. What do we need to do to become financially sustainable, and what level of activity is needed, and what combination, that kind of thing.
So Gloria, you're just about out of time, about 10, 20 more seconds.
Okay, thanks. Now that just sort of threw me off. The thing that we found most surprising in all of this is actually how quickly the community has responded and how much positive feedback we've received. And the other area that I would be interested to talk about is the difficulties around communication and how people don't necessarily hear what it is you think that you're saying.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Gloria. And a theme that I'm hearing throughout people's sharing is just the breadth and the depth and the extension of partnerships that you're inviting and you're being open to, and the people that you're listening to. I just amazed. It just sounds like such a attentive, inclusive process, and an opening up process that you are stepping into your communities that way. So it's very, very interesting. Ralph, I'd love to invite you to join us at this point and share some of your story.
Thank you very much, Sarah. And I'm with Ebenezer United Church, which is in South Markham. And in fact, we're right on the border of Markham and Toronto. Ebenezer's been around for about 140 years. And back 40 years ago, it was kind of in a farming area. All the land around was farming land, and all the people that attended the church were farmers and their families. That changed very quickly about 40 to 30 years ago, when suburbs started to expand and they encroached upon the traditional farming aspect of Markham. And suddenly we were surrounded with brand new subdivisions and brand new groups of people. And our little tiny country church had to grow along with that. So about 30 years ago, we built an expansion to the church, a new sanctuary, new offices, new facilities. And as a result, we didn't worship in the traditional heritage church that was there. And over time, it deteriorated, and we had broken windows and roof leaking and everything else, but it just wasn't being used and it wasn't being supported. And the congregation came to a realization we had to do something, and burning it down wasn't an option. And so we decided we had to rent it, and preferably for some kind of aspect that would be socially responsible within the community. But we couldn't rent it in its condition, and we didn't have the money to fix it up without renting it. So we set out to find how we could get some funding to actually refurbish it as a community center. We established a relationship with 4 social agencies in York Region and formed a consortium with them, applying for a Trillium grant, which we did receive in 2013, and it allowed us to refurbish the facility, turn it into a community center focused facility, and provided 3 years of funding for those 4 agencies to deliver their programs in South York region as well. That was great. At the end of the 3 years, we called that Community Connects was the name of the organization. At the end of the 3 years, some of the organizations had changed their direction, changed their focus, and decided not to continue. And again, we were left with how do we use this facility to meet the needs of the community? We did a survey of the congregation, and we did a survey, actually a round table with community organizers in the area. And it was decided that, yes, we wanted to make this more of an outreach facility, and how could we use that for the benefit of the community. The facility is fully accessible. It has health-approved kitchen, good transit location. We were and still do provide space to a Montessori school. ESL run classes there, about 500 students a year. So it was, again, being well utilized in some regards, but it wasn't necessarily filling the needs of the community. And the community was changing. So this community was, again, shifting to a very large number of newcomers to Canada, primarily from Hong Kong and China. And we were not understanding of what their needs were or what their requirements were for a community center. Through the ESL, we came to realize that there was a lot of human abuse that was occurring within this newcomer community. So a lot of the people that were living around us had come to Canada on visitors' visas and were applying for permanent residency status from within Canada, but they hadn't yet received it. As a result, they were non-people as far as the government was concerned, and they didn't have social insurance numbers or anything else, and they were being taken advantage of. The average wage that they were earning was $3.50 per hour. Landlords were treating them terribly, and so we decided that we should do something to try and address this human abuse that was occurring within our community. So we applied and received a social innovation grant from EDGE that allowed us to put together and run some legal workshops on 4 topics for this community. An introduction to Canadian law, the landlord-tenant law, employment law, and immigration law. And we offered these at no charge, including lunch, to the community. And we got a lot of people that we had never connected with before that actually came and learned what rights they had and how they could protect themselves. And we're continuing with that program as well, but it's changing over time. We also established a relationship with other local organizations, and in particular, the Social Services Network, which is an organization, not-for-profit charity, that provides social interaction for Southeast Asians. And they were looking for a facility with a kitchen, and we now run with them community kitchen programs every second week at our location. We run a Mums and Tots program with the Blue Hills Support Center, and we have built up a fair number of contacts out there. We run senior information sessions, and next year we're going to be running a STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math camp at our location as well. One of the things that we learned is that as our community around us changed and became more ethnic diverse, and in fact it was changing to where it was primarily Chinese and Hong Kong people, and the prominent language was Mandarin versus English, that we had to change as well, and we didn't know how to connect with a lot of these communities. So, but the value of forming the partnerships was these were channels for us to actually make contact and establish relationships within communities that we had not been able to do in the past. We had our eyes opened. We learned how they, or what they look for, how they find information, and how best to connect with them. And so now we're in the process of relooking at next year and how we can modify our programs such that they better address these communities now that we've established more relationships. And what we recognize is that 100 years ago, Ebenezer was the center of the community, and we want to establish it again.
Very exciting. Wow, I bet you would never have dreamed that that's where you might have ended up, but you paid attention along the way, and look where it got you. That's very cool. So I am aware that we only have a little bit of time left. So I don't know if anybody, maybe we have time for, unfortunately, probably just one question. So if somebody has a question you would like to ask one of the presenters, perhaps you could unmute yourself and ask the question.
I actually do have a question. Let me just bring it up.
And James, where are you calling from?
Toronto.
Great.
So as I said to begin with, I'm with the architecture firm ERA Architects, and I've already talked to Bruce about the Spire. But basically what I'm looking at, we want, I think right now, my main question would be, especially for the Northern Ontario towns that the churches are in, they aren't United Church, they're Anglican churches. And I think the United Church has a bit more of an openness to it. I don't know the specifics of how open to change these two churches are, but I think there are some barriers. What I'm looking at is if anyone has any specific recommendations for the best ways to bridge gaps between the community, just sort of connect different demographics within the communities together to work together for the church's benefit. And Bruce has talked before about separating the church from the space. And I was just wondering if anyone else with these faith communities, if anyone else had any sort of examples of whether or not they were more successful when they explicitly separated those two, or if working together in some circumstances and emphasizing the church as a part of the space and the faith-related issues as part of the space, if that was more effective, if there are examples of both, that sort of thing. I know that's a lot to throw at people. Anything that someone wants to throw back at me, I just looking for whatever is available.
Okay. So one question I'll ask at this point is if what I would like to do is when I send out the survey is to link people so that you see one another's emails. Perhaps you can send me an email if you're uncomfortable with that.
Sure.
So that way, James, you would be able to follow up specifically around this particular question with people. But I wonder if anybody has any reflection on James' question at this point.
Actually, I do, only because we at Metropolitan, we're right downtown Toronto, and we started up a faith-based community hub. And we've done that with the other cathedrals in downtown Toronto, so St. Michael's, the Catholic Cathedral, St. James, the Anglican Cathedral, and the Sisters of St. Joseph, the ones who built the hospitals and whatnot. And so we are launching a project together that's in February, but we spent the last 2 years working together, and we are very clear, and we talk to people, in fact, that it is a faith-based network, a community hub, but the project itself is not about proselytization. It's actually, we came together, and one of the first things we did was we did a needs assessment of downtown Toronto to identify what were the needs of vulnerable people and what are they looking for. And we identified was that there's a glass ceiling of dependency. So even though that people may be on social services and have all these other resources, they have access to basic needs such as food banks and whatnot, they're still dependent. And so what we are looking at is providing a program that still is, in terms of meets the needs, but it's a faith and action perspective. We don't need to talk about why we're doing this, but it's more of a reality that it is a church group and its members, church members, coming together to work together to find a solution with our vulnerable community. And so that it's sort of a middle ground between the black and white that we normally talk about.
Great. Thanks, Tim. So unfortunately, we're kind of ending the time frame that we allotted ourselves for this conversation. I think one of my observations would be that probably we could have spent time with each speaker individually, and it would have been very rich. So I really hate ending these sessions without some kind of closure. So what I would invite you to do is to find the chat button across the bottom there. And if you could just write kind of one word or one statement that reflects top of mind what you're taking away from this call today. So if you would be willing to do that, just as a way of concluding our time, to just write one word or one comment that will be kind of the top of mind piece that you're taking from this call today. And when we do our survey, there'll be a chance to indicate if there are other topics you're interested in speaking to. So you could be able to read those as people post them. So thank you so much, everybody, for joining us on the call today. And I've enjoyed it very much, and I hope you have as well. And perhaps we can just kind of wave to say goodbye. And hopefully we shall reconnect soon. I'll leave the call open for a little while as folk are writing their kind of farewell statements and responses as our part of our close. But thank you so much. I'll unmute everyone, and then we can let chaos reign for a little bit as we part.
Great.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. Great talking to you.
Yeah.
From north of 60.
Yeah. Interesting.
Bye, everyone. It was
Bye-bye.
awesome.
Thanks.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thanks.
I can hear the happy click of someone's laptop.
James working away there. Hi, James.
Hi there. I'm actually not typing at the moment. Someone else.
How do I sign off here? Leave meeting. Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye, Bruce. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah.
Can you hear me?
I can hear someone. I'm not sure who's
Yes, it's
right
John
now.
here.
Hi, John.
I've got your lovely picture up, and I can't find a way to close it. No offense.
So I think there's
closed down.
a spot where it says you can leave the meeting, and if not,
Yeah.
I'll close.
Well, I
the
closed
call.
that. I closed that page, and it seemed to be.
You're
And
still
it's not
there?
even showing up in my task bar that you exist. So,
Okay.
I'm not quite sure. So I guess until you sign up.
So along the bottom, is there something where it says leave meeting?
No, I don't have that. I don't have that page because I closed it.
Okay.
Anyway,
well, I will be ending the meeting very shortly. I'm just waiting to see if there's any more
Okay.
chat functions or
I
chat.
wanted to, in the small group, I started to mention the book Joining God, by Alan Roxburgh. Toronto Conference had him in for a workshop with about 70 lay and clergy. And it's about finding God in the neighborhood. And a lot of these things, whether it's diversity related or hubs or anything, it all comes back to listening. And what I think what we miss is we keep telling people who they should be listening to, but we don't talk about how to listen.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
So,
I've heard mention of Alan Roxburgh before, and he sounds like an amazing resource for United churches that are kind of on the move.
Yeah,
or other communities.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay.
Great. Thanks, John.
Good
Glad
afternoon.
you could join us.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, well, James and Jeff, we're the last ones left.
Great.
We're closing down the pub.
Yes. Much a pity, and no last call. So, Sarah, I'm going to send you an email. I have to reschedule our chat on Monday. But
Okay.
What an interesting hour engrossed in high tech and some very thoughtful people. I'm really happy you showed me this.
Yeah, it's pretty sweet, isn't it?
It's an amazing tool. And what did you call them? Your discussion leaders, your topic leads? What was
Yes.
Yeah. They are grappling with the church attendance has been in slow decline for a long time, and I'm watching these people tackle the quest for relevance and revenue,
Yes.
and both quite successfully. So
Yeah.
it'll be. It was a great way to spend an hour. I feel like a wiser person. But let's talk about what I can do for you. I'll have to move our discussion on Monday. I'm working all day. But I'll send you.
That sounds good, Jeff. Thank you.
Okay.
All right,
Talk to
take
you
care. Bye-bye. Bye, James.
Bye-bye. Thanks so much. Nice to meet you all.
Okay, take care. Bye-bye.